Yak aya yok sa tinil the cut you on. Hashi de hain aya yak. Did the yak go ka. Chet chewa woos kainach ka. Wasat do a sock chocolate. Lingit kainach. Herkaden hosaku. What has to you katangi adach aya. Where Mayan you katangi katech hosaku. Question card talk show he khatra akshat. Oh, what's that name? Mexico ke hawutin. Kleinach ka away. Ha ina kawani gada tastu pusti. Ha hastu yukatangi. Ya ta konachki ge at dakhun we kinder tukens in kutzati. Konachawe shige at gudach kawe konachawe has outlayech. Ya hastu klishko has. Ye ti Yesu. Uhan. Kinde aya keude art. Like keu to the art. Keu to art. A shakik aya ye khatbuti. Ye awa ina kawani. Kashtasa ayanach shage ya ani kak. Yucatan Peninsula, you do a sako at. Ho, okay. Joy at the katate hosatin yak. Ye awa. Gwash kasha shinketsai kosti hosaku. Oots a te. Gwash giwe. Gled kak inach. Soapstone. Wait the yak away. An hasawa shechen. Chak. Kashich it aya. Yende aya. Achu Yende hasfu Chatra klachonachwe ach a kauchlechek. We tech putzati. Tech teen. Yende chwatlet. Chwatlet. Tlach toa oshkudach chatwuskidi. Gwash Wooch. Ach aya chatwuskidi. Ye awe ha ina kawanig. Ach ye has uwaji. Ach ha wuha stekatuhan. Gusu mayan stekatas adach has wuha. Mayan chatzati ya du chat. Wegal ya has to dis kuku plain. Kone ay yach kukwaju. Kuyar dahaya kutzati. What's that do sa? 2021. Akatchatse waka. We Mayan calendar ko ashu hihi. We kuyar dahaya. Tehuch the cut with Lingit ani. We Mayan ku ha ina kawanikata. Keshtasa has hours ku ada. Ya odometer yachyati. Gwash yatayach. Tu yekwati. Tu kanajuk. Ye ewe ha tundatani. Ha ina kawanik tu Mel Gibson out yechwe chakuta kuyar dahai. Ye ha datige. Like. Kesh ayachuti ade has shkashnik ye. Hadad. Keshtasa has hours ku hadad. Ye awe atshuk yu chatangi awe panachawe ha ina kawani. Ach tuwu wuk ya has tu ani data we ha ina kawani. Achawe kwash huch awe ya ha atu arti has tu ani kak cha kudach ani. Ye ka ach tu wasaku ye yausaka. Ach tu wasaku ha yuch atangi teen. In yuch achwatan. Lingit chinach du in chachwatan. Gunnish cheese, you think go has ani. A kachawe kututini. Asach tu ye ha inki niki a dat. You think go has dat yachsawe has to kusti. Wasa at ya na name ye ani koch. Ach tu ye ye iti Yesu yak. Aka awe mayan yuchatangitin achin yuchewatan. Ach tu ye Gwash dech tak siŵr chi chyn wei gael a dach Mongolia, the Katwe Kasha, the Honey, Fairbanks, no, like Anchorage, Yewutian. Wegao, National Park Service teen, Yejichwane. Haskoa, Shkait Lahaj. We Mongolia President Ayewutian. Hatka Chechosakun. Just Yechat Yosaka Achine Jene. Ito agesiku wait gachtu ati. Yege at Yakwahi. That's the way. Hechosaku. Atcha ayetiqa. Atcha again. Nachtu art. Achoe koneka kwaha. Chosatin gwasn. Dakuni nacha. Yakonach yake suits yehas awa u. Has to cook yek de we chosatin. Yata. Wuchi new ʼadudli.átk. Wuchi new has ʼadudli.átk on. Ha. Secret Service again? What's that? Nani? Aka awe aka. Wait, the Cutway Park Service yechene shut the honey Alaska cook. Kawakshi yich with the hun. Yeyawaka. Gunchish Johan Gunchish, President of Mongolia. Kelkadane uwasa. Kelkadane uwasa. Dusai. Kesh awas cook. Adatawe wushuk. Ha eh. A yage. Keshayachuti. Itcha. We away. Sister Park. Has au shayech. Ya hucha. We. Ya did the he. Just a dach awa art. Katka we Mongolia president do Khantkhagudi. Ya Secret Service cha adusa has to da. Kandane khatyauts a. Het was a wati do inu khachtetani. Hutsu. Achtuasagu hayukatangitin yukakwatan. Yahastu ani kakaya dena ina. Kwachak hoa. Chak hatkagu konkian. Washwushas awas kun. Hoka ha. Lingit kinach yukakwatan. We ambassador ko Mongolian teen achin yukwatani. The cut yech ayachagu diach to us a guka in yuchachtan ha yuchatangitin. One panins klechat hasaya ach klechat has our ach kaya ach. Kushdeach ko ach to us a gu hasawa achi ha yuchatangi. Yeah, we gonna cheese a kaiti sa achi. Washway zina ach to us a gu. Oh, klet kusti. Ito agasagu yuchayatani. Aka awe konech akakwanik ijis.
Showa ishkalnige. Konachuk echa. Tlatsa itinachayati shayadahin Lingit ilchatangish tukhaltu ajoyach tu yake konach yatach walgenich dekat yuhan. Gunashish hadi adi. Gunashish.
Okay, cheese.
What's cheese?
Ah. Adisa te Lingit kinach yukakwatan. Chadisa, chadasata. Wal chocolate. Wal mayan. Yet atsu yisikuke. Kuch kudzeti. Akachawe du tach. Chiclet you do a sago at. Mayan yukatangi adachawe we chiclet. Ye awe ha ina kawanik we ka. Okay.
Chocolate? Bubblegum?
Ye awe. Kuch. One Qanian's Claydahin Achunitin. Kuch away. Kuch again? Kuch. Oh, you said kuch. I thought you said kuch. No, I said kuch. I was like, are we saying the same thing? So.
Welcome to my world.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything on Lingit? And I'll give you a recap.
I could say something quick. Yisakugi, Shkuyesh, Yayawaka, Yis, Yuchatank, Jas, Ach, Klaqai, Nashlain. Yidat.
It's a brain melter. Okay. There was another kind of fun, I'd say, Tokane took out, Tokane took, Keoja took. There it is. The baby's butt exploded. So it was like kind of a fun one too. It's not like, it's not fun, but just the sound, because you got Tokane, which comes from tuk, which is a cradle board. And then you'd say tuk, which is a butt. And then you'd say keoja tuk, which is to go kaboom. So, but it's just a metaphor for like when they drop a huge one. So now you know.
Fix.
So, anything else? Anybody want to share?
Khane Khatsu Claydahin, Yucatan Peninsula de Wutua Kuch, Dachnachawa, Khunke Kachat, Wooch in Yucatan Peninsula de Wutua Kuch. Wegao, Gune scuba diving, Stuchwas tu, Wook Echa, Unastis.
Okay. Uhana we snorkel kautua ak. Atlain atrekutati we hintak. Khat nak chadasa. Chatakigio te chotanjin. Khatkukwaha ake we tus. Echosaka. Uhan kelkadane hatua sagui hini. Taye hawutian. Ye awe chatakoe ha ina we akanik nuch. Ya ha yanwad. Ikona. Konachoe sa atihin. Kustinak kutziti. Chadasa konakadate. Ya atlena kushta. Yeah, yeah, a lot of things in there in the water over there. I was scared of everything. It's like shark's gonna eat me, that thing's gonna bite me. It's like, being Tlingit, we just grew up and they're always like, get out of the water. It's the cold. There's gigantic octopus. There's monsters. There's the tushtaka coming for you. So it's just kind of ingrained. So every time in the water, it's like, this is it. It was always fun. It was wonderful. And let me recap a little bit. So I said we were in here just a while ago, and this one person asked me, what do we call chocolate? And I said, I don't know. But one time I went to Mexico, and I spoke Tlingit with the person who's mine. And let's see. Went down there. At one point we went to this old village, and they make I don't know how do you say a pyramid. I said there's 4 of these upside down carrots. That's what I say. Because it's a word for triangle. It's kindatukintsin. It's a upside down carrot. I don't know why it's upside down, but that's just how it is. And then I said, let's see. We walked up to the top, and it was the tallest thing in the Yucatan Peninsula, and they told us that. I was like, whoa, I can see everything. Nothing is taller. Then we start walking down, the thing's made of like soapstone or something. It was slippery. I was scared of heights. And I was like, how would people just walk downstairs when they're a gajillion feet up in the air? I have no idea. And so, Akshat, just so my wife and lots of other people just walking down the stairs, and they got this big rope, and I'm just crawling down the stairs, terrified that even though there's a rope, I'm just gonna slide down and die, right? So, but I did have a lot of fun. There's a lot of good food, and at the end, there was a person there. Well, there was a person there who was chatting with us, like giving us a tour, and he was so funny. He would say things like, people keep saying like the Mayans disappeared. Like, what happened? The aliens come get them? Did they just vanish? He's like, I'm Mayan. He's like, and he'd show a picture of the statue, and it's got this kind of nose that curves out, comes down. And he's like, I got the same nose. And he did. He had the exact same nose. It was really cool. And he was making fun of the movie that came out. It's like, when the Mayan calendar ends, the world, and like the whole world falls apart in this movie. And it kind of is just coming out. It was like 10, 12 years ago. And he was just laughing. He's like, they don't know anything. They could have just asked. That calendar just flips over. It's like you got a really old car and the odometer hits all nines. It's just going to go back to zero. It's like the car's not just going to explode. It's like right on. And then you talk about the Mel Gibson movie. You say it was the worst depiction of his people ever. And this is like, nothing was right. It wasn't us at all. And everyone's watching this thing and it's great. And it's like, this is the coolest guy I've ever met. So we got done with the tour and I said, I'd like to speak to you in Lingit so I could thank you. And so I thanked him in Lingit and he talked to me in Mayan. And I was like I was high on that all day. It was so interesting for me. And then a while ago I didn't say this other part. Maybe, okay, I will. So I was in Anchorage and I was working for the Park Service, and I'll mention them by name, even though, hey, this is a really cool summer internship. You go work in Skagway for the Park Service and be a cultural interpreter. And this is where I was born, and I'm helping to put this together. So never mind what I'm about to say about the Park Service. This has to do with the office in Anchorage and Fairbanks. But Skagway has got it together. Okay. So I was in Anchorage. This is also going back probably 13, 14 years. So when I first started going to get a MFA in creative writing, I got a job with the Park Service. It was a good job. It was with a really nice guy named Jeff Racing. But they sent me this training to kind of learn about archiving. It was very interesting. And I'm like trying to figure out all this stuff about keeping track of papers. I'm like, I'm so bad at keeping track of anything. But it's an interesting concept, how you'd like go through a whole bunch of stuff if someone brought over just a whole mess of papers. And then we're going to take a break, and the person I was working with, she said, hey, there's some big thing going on. Do you want to go watch it? I was like, what is it? She's like, I don't know. But there's food. I was like, there's food? Let's go. So we go. And then I'm sitting there, and then I walk in, and these guys have like these, like the classic black suits, and they look like really big, tough guys. And they all got a little thing in their ear, and they're talking to each other. It's like the Secret Service or something. And this is where I said, they brought shame. They shamed themselves. Schkeit lehat. They're sitting there, and then they said, we're going to make the sister park with Mongolia. That's what we're doing here. And I would like to thank the president of Mongolia. And I was like, what? He's here. And this was like the head of the Park Service of Alaska, like the National Park Service, all the Alaska parks. And she just messed up his name. And then she kind of giggled. And I was just like, this is your job. This is like, I don't care how difficult the name is. You've got to know that name. Because you're in Kawakshiyik. Well, I'm looking at it from a Lingit perspective. I was like, you just humiliate all your people, right? And I didn't say this part either. But they're like, well, this is a federal building, so we can't have alcohol, but we're going to toast. And then they brought out like the cheapest little plastic cups. I was like, couldn't you at least get glasses? But it gets worse. Okay. Here's the worst part. Aqawe Fairbanks de Haswapuk we Mongolia. Oh, and let me finish this part in English. And so I walked up, and well, they knew his name, but they just mispronounced it horribly. This person did. So then everybody just leaves. was like, what? I'm gonna go talk to this guy. That's the president of Mongolia. So I went over there, and everyone just kind of gave me this look, like, what do you do? And I said, oh, is it okay if I talk to him? And they said, yeah. And he didn't look that interested. I was like, okay, he wants to talk to me. And I said, this isn't our ancestral land. This is the land of our cousins, the Dena'ina. But I'd like to speak to you in my language, because maybe in ancient times our ancestors knew who each other was. And then he changed. I said some things in Lingit, just said, thank you, welcome to their land, and I hope they treat you with respect, right? And then he gave me like the good firm handshake, and then he said something in Mongolian, and then his ambassador stepped up and like really talked to me and then translated. It was a really cool moment. Itchoe Fairbanks de Haswapuk. Fairbanks. Hatsushkeit lahaj. Kawakshiyik ehas aus. Yehas ayausanik. Uha yeoe wushjin hastlek. Sister Park Uhan Sukach Sister City. Yeoe hatuwasaku. Tushayechi. Mongolian Shadahani. Eyausaka. Ijiyasayayata. Sate. Kachashitsini Sate. Ayayata. Genghis Khan. Wait ayach. Du Sate. Du Sad. Du Sate. Yach. Oh wait. Kanachashitsini Ataweha Anidach. Fairbanks. On Ati. Yadu ah. Fairbanks on Katikai. So they go to Fairbanks and they had another ceremony in front of the people. The president of Mongolia, and they shook hands and they said, we're making sister cities. And the president of Mongolia said, through his interpreter, and I read about this one in the paper, I didn't see it, even though I was living in Fairbanks at the time. It said, we want to give you this medallion. It's a sacred medallion from our people. Genghis Khan wore a medallion just like this. And they gave it to the mayor. And the mayor goes, here's the key to the city. We don't have anything. We don't have anything we can give to the president. Like, what does that do? It's like, anyways. There's my stories. I'm sticking to them.
That was good. You know, they may have been able to conjure up something of the people of the land, you know what I mean? Instead of giving them the key to the city.
They would work with some of the Gwich'in people. They would have put together something great. If they, because like, we're like, what? We're doing stuff in front of people? We got to make it big. Got to go big. Although maybe the key to the city is very important. I don't know. It just didn't seem, it seemed a little empty to me. Okay. That's what I think I want to start. So I think we'll move into sharing any strategies you want to share. Any things that you've discovered that help you study Lingit, live with Lingit. We're about halfway through. We'll take a break next week. And then we got another half of this semester. But then every time we start getting the sun, we had this surprise, beautiful sunset walking into class today. So the summer's coming. And when summer comes, it's real easy to just stop. And it's always easy, to be honest. It's always easy to just stop. So we don't want people to stop. But then we should sort of talk about what's working for you. What are you doing? What are you doing? What have you discovered? What are you using? What are you working on? That kind of stuff. Anybody who wants to share anything, love to hear.
So every break that we've had so far, and every break between the classes I've taken, I go through all of my notebooks. I'm old school, I do paper. And I have what I call my master book of Lingit. And I transcribe all the new words and phrases I learned into my master book of Lingit and put it there. And that can take a while. And then anything I don't know, I highlight in my regular books, and I go back and look it up in different resources or try to figure out what it was, and then double check that I have all the right gutturals and high tones on it before it can go into my master book with Lingit, because I put it in ink and it's going to stay there.
Ooh.
And so that's what I do on my breaks to keep me up on it. And then I've been working on a long-term project to try and collect all of the words that you would need to know to do regalia sewing and beading into,
Awesome.
I want to make, at this point, it'd be like a 6-page brochure, but I want to make a single one, because I keep getting all these tiny little handouts, or finding one word here, or one word there. I was like, hey, I want to master lists of regalia making. So
Wow.
that's been my 2 projects I've been doing.
Okay. Well, that second one is called, I'm going to see if this camera picks me up. If I start talking. Oh, okay. Well, that second one's called like domain reclamation. So like you want to go, I want to sew and make regalia and Lingit. So then you've got to get the register. And the register is everything I need to know how to say. So I need to know all the names of the things I'm going to use. And I need to think of all the verbs that I'm going to have to come up with in terms of sewing, but even beyond sewing, it's like stabbing the needle through, pulling it up, like anything. And also if there's any sort of adhesives involved, if there's buttons, if there's, you're gonna sort of, for a button, you might sew it through and then you might have to wrap it around sometimes. And so,
Right, like trying to figure out how to say I stabbed myself, and like Ida helped me with that one last time. Because that's a common thing that happens in sewing.
yeah.
And so it was hard to figure out, because there was words for like hitting people in the face, but like, no, I just stabbed my own self. And not too greatly either.
And there's some of them, like, so you can cut something, but if you cut yourself, or if you're cutting flesh, like you're cutting someone alive, that's a different type of cutting. And then that's the one you'd use for cutting yourself. Same with burning something. If you're burning some sort of living flesh, that's a different verb. So yeah, you got some of that stuff. You okay? Anyone else? Sheesh.
Shaktek Kataya. Dasayitin. Kedem kutsati. Klikge. Kwal. ʼadudli.átk. Su yenau. Wooch dunikwa. So, ʼadudli.átk. Su ye na u. Wooch dunikwa. I look for things in the world with Lingit on them.
Okay.
And Gunostish Forest Service, Juneau District, for putting their sorting signs in Tlingit.
Yeah, they're doing quite a bit. And if you go to some of the campgrounds around town and stuff, they got Lingit names. And it's pretty amazing to see that happening. And so trying to work on restoring some place names as well. And then, yeah, just putting Lingit up, like throw it away, trash can. Okay. Cool.
Hataya.
Ah.
So for me, I know that right now I've been I've been in a lot of Lingit classes, is I think the main point. But I try to, I think something that makes me stick to it is to have like really solid language goals that I can work towards. And that's something that keeps me going, because it feels really good when you're able to reach some of those goals. So right now I'm doing a master apprentice plan, because my goal is to just spend a lot of time with some fluent speakers that I'm close with this summer. And so that's like something that's kind of keeping me going to look forward to that. And that's all a comprehensive list. It's like 10 sentences, 10 to 25 words and sentences per week. And it's about 10 weeks, and you could choose what you want to learn. And so that's something that really excites me. I think one section's on ku'ich vocab, one section is on hunting, one is fishing, And then like one's moose hide tanning, just all stuff that I'm passionate about. Some other fun things is like collaborating with other language learners. I know like me and Nayla Toga are going to be doing some video stuff on Lingit, so stay tuned. Yeah, we've been kind of meeting and talking about that. And so just kind of creating fun opportunities to work with each other and just to stay in the language. So gonna teach.
Okay. Sheesh. There was a question that came through, which is, there is a place called Untitled. It's like a park just a little bit north of here. I've asked a couple folks about it, and I haven't heard yet. It sure sounds like a spirit helper behind the village. That's what it sounds like to me if you have on e yake. Like I would expect a yake on a high tone on the yake.
That's cheese.
Ah,
So spirit helper behind the what?
behind the village.
Okay.
So when you see on, like for me, there's a bunch of Tlingit words that are like this where it could mean a couple different things, but they're sort of this standard kind of meaning. If someone says "Ach ani did ʼadudli.átk," I would interpret that as "Let's walk to my village." Okay, that's it. What else?
You know, something that helps me with sticking to the plan, trying to learn Lingit, is when I hit the wall and you're just like, man, I need to let my brain rest. And sometimes you may not feel like doing anything else with it for a little bit because of the frustration. I find that just looking at something else instead of where I'm stuck at, I just go and look at something else that amuses me, or something that you know, I might find some kind of interest in. Like one of the things I do is I look for historical documents and try to find strange ways that people use phonetics in the past to talk about something I'm interested in, and try to figure out what those phonetics actually mean and put together a puzzle. That's really fun for me. And when I feel refreshed, I feel like, you know, not so stuck. I can go back to those things that are difficult for me and have a more relaxed, not so intense feeling when I'm working on it. So sometimes just stepping away from what you're working on and working on something else for a bit is a lot of help.
Okay. Yeah, because I think especially as you start to get farther and farther along, the road becomes a little bit less clear, I think, in terms of what do I need to do now? And now what do I need to do? And now what do I need to do? And there are some things that I think become obvious. Like I gotta learn how to do this type of thing more. But I think avoiding this feeling that I have to learn to do this thing, then that thing. And so once I master this thing, I could do this other thing. Like that could end up getting you a little bit stuck sometimes and tired. Whereas I do think, yeah, if you're getting tired of something, move on to something else, but then come back to that thing a little bit later because you might have a fresh outlook on it after you set it down for a while. Sheesh.
This
Okay,
one's
yeah,
gonna,
Wafatini. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. You first.
this one's gonna sound a little bit funny, but what can work for me is what happened in class last night. For me, we just went around in class and we were talking about where we're at, and I think my ears had to hear my own voice, starting to feel the disappointment in my growth at this point. I guess maybe I'm a verbal processor, but this isn't a tip or trick as much as other people have been sharing, but I think just sharing sometimes the struggle, and hearing myself talk about not having enough time or these things or those things. And, you know, I think like many of you, all of you, I really want this. And sometimes we just got to do what we got to do. And Gunachish Hune for giving us the opportunity to share.
Oh, yeah. Well, and yeah, I think sometimes like there are these expectations sometimes, like I'm supposed to know, and I'm not supposed to say I don't know, and I'm not supposed to say I'm having a hard time. But I think that kind of mentality as well can get you into, because then you kind of isolate yourself a little bit. And I think it's totally fine to say, man, I'm just struggling with this thing. And then maybe we can move on to a different thing, or we can all talk about it. Because I think the farther along you go, I think it does, you know, I guess in my mind, I always thought once I start learning Lingit, man, it's gonna be like I'm gonna be like a plane that takes off, and sort of like, no, you're gonna be like this thing that gets farther into the mud. It gets a little harder to walk, but then you do sort of get there as well. Like you do emerge on the other side of this thing, and then you start talking and listening, and you're like, whoa, like I've seen people do that, and I've done it myself. Like I was in Sitka, and I think it was in Sitka where it happened. And I was supposed to respond to Walter Sobolov, who gave this incredible speech. And there's a house full, like a big building full of people. And they came through and they said, we want you to say something. And then we're picking people to respond. And so I was like, oh no, okay, well, I better think of some cool things to say. And so I felt like I had all these things lined up. And maybe I told you folks this before, but I got up and I looked at all these people staring at me. And I looked at 100-year-old genius sitting next to me in his chill cap blanket and this amazing hat. And then I look at this row of clan leaders. I lost everything. And so I got really scared. And I just rolled myself back to a starting point. So I said, so I said, please forgive me. I'm learning Lingit. Herman Davis just yelled out, it will be. And I was fine. And I said a bunch of stuff. Then I got down, I was like, I didn't even know I could say that, right? And so like you do hit these points too, where you sort of, you have these really high moments. And then you will have these other moments where you're just like wading through these things as your brain starts to assemble stuff. Because I think in their beginning phases, I do think you see these significant jumps. I didn't know how to say the name for this. I didn't know how to say this phrase. I didn't know how to make this sound. But then you start getting into the higher level mechanics of it all. And you're like, I didn't even know any of that existed. Now what am I supposed to do? So yeah, I do appreciate folks sharing, and I always try to stop every now and then and say, are we okay? Are we okay? Because it's okay to not be okay too. I see a hand up. What's up?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I like Wooch. Sometimes I get really overwhelmed, especially with like a lot of the intense conjugation, and I love it though. I really love it, and I love the interpreting the old speeches. I love it, but it's really intense and hard. And so what I do is I try to go and listen to like some of the YouTubes. I watch YouTubes a lot, like the intermediate classes or the older beginning classes, just to kind of remind myself that I actually do know some things and I feel a little bit refreshed because it's not so intense. So that's how I kind of dive myself up again. Goodness, cheese.
Okay. And just in case any of you ever ask me this question, let me tell you what the answer is probably going to be. Should I take this again? No, take the next thing. It's a long journey. It's such a long journey. So it sounds to me like someone's saying, should I jump on the boat and go back 100 miles and then walk this 100 miles again? No, like you gotta, ooh. But also just sort of like, when you take beginning Tlingit, you're not a beginner. You become a beginner, and then you're ready for intermediate. When you take intermediate, you're not an intermediate speaker. It's not what it's saying, it's not how it's designed. It means, well, I'm a beginner now, and I need to take this path to become, by the end, you should be an intermediate speaker. Then when you sign up for advanced, it doesn't mean you're advanced. It means you're intermediate and you're ready for the advanced journey. So also keep that in mind too, because every year I get a few people like, oh, I'm just not getting it. It's like, well, let's keep walking. You know, and it's not like trying to be mean or anything. It's just like a goal.
Okay, some good stuff. I like a lot what you're saying here. When you brought up Flutu Ish, he would say yada tune. I always go straight yada tune. Like everything's a forward journey. What I've been doing is my job before they stuck me back in the corner behind a computer is I'd see people and I'd try play, okay, you try things and it breaks the ice. And then from that you build, and it's like, man, what am I supposed to say right now? And then it breaks that ice, and then you kind of have somebody you'll stop and converse with, even if it's in English, you have some commonality. And then it kind of shocks you into making your mind think about it. And then when you're talking about snorkeling and diving, I was looking up words just like underwater mammal breathing, just to look up odd things. And then lately I've been looking up history and looking up ship logs, and then finding like La Perouse, when they brought up Ducktang Tan, they brought up Tlaknakari and Kusnau, and you can pick it out, and it also helps you see other ways that they would write that. And it's like, I know what that is. And but the biggest one for me is just taking a chance when you see somebody, and it's hard now, but you just try it. That then later you come back and they say, hey, what's this? And you know it. And it's like, oh, didn't even realize I had that in my brain. But then you broke that ice and you have a friend to talk to.
Yeah. Yuck a. And cheese. And what I'll do over the weekend, I'm not sure if I'll get to it tonight, but I'll try. So I'm going to put these recordings on both intermediate Tlingit and advanced Tlingit. Go to tlingitlanguage.com, learning Tlingit. You can go to intermediate or advanced. And I'll put some links with this recording to the De Laguna folders. We got pretty much all the recordings that De Laguna made. All the papers, everything. And then I'll put a link to the Downhauer finding guide. So you look at that finding guide, and if you're interested in one of those tapes, let me know, and I will get it to you. Because, take a break. You got a week, take a break. But if you want some Tlingit to listen to, just, sometimes just listening to the same thing, while you're doing something. Like you gotta probably do the dishes, unless you're just throwing them away and buying new ones, right? So you gotta, everyone's got their kind of day-to-day stuff they've got to do, folding the laundry, whatever. Pop them in your ears and just listen to the old people, right? And then so you can have all your favorite playlists or your podcasts or whatever. You could still have that stuff, but you've got to make the room for the language in your life, and you're going to have to put it around you. And there's strategies too. We've got plenty of recordings that are also, we've got the transcription and translation for them. So the Raven book's going to come out sometime soon. We got every recording that's in that book, and you can listen to it. And then you could read it, and you could do a bunch of work, and then you already know the English. So just let your brain keep listening to it, and it's going to make a bunch of those connections. Because there may be some of these concepts that you're having a tough time with, but if you just keep listening to Tlingit, you'll be like, okay, I get it now. Because I don't have to make sense of it in English. I can just sort of understand that it exists and basically what it is, and then see it functioning in Tlingit. Okay, see a couple hands up. Wasa.
Why don't you go ahead, Zafe?
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh.
Okay, I've got a tip or two. One is that erasable highlighters exist. They like erase when you heat with friction. And I've been going through, I want to go through all the Downhauer books or everything I can find in translation. I've been going through the book, and like every time I find a word that corresponds, like I've figured out finally how to recognize verbs. So that makes it a lot easier. But every time I find a word in English that corresponds with the Tlingit, I'm able to mark it using like 5 different erasable highlighters. And for me, that's a puzzle that really suits my it's kind of like some people like doing a little Sudoku each day. And I think different things suit different people. I know I need to do more listening and talking, but anyway, I found something that works that I just like. It feels a little rewarding to do every day, and I mean that might work for some people, but going through the Downhauer books with erasable highlighters, and then for other people maybe different things. Another thing is for the people who are trying to be beginners, our class, which is just like, at least like I've looked into the like advanced grammar stuff enough to know that like in order to get to the place where we can say things right, we're going to have to spend a really, really long time saying things wrong. It's like there's a long, long valley of wrongness ahead of us, and we just have to walk through it, and there's no other way. And so hopefully we're all going to end up being speakers at the end who can actually say the right thing sometimes. But in the meantime, like there's no shame in being real wrong while we're making our best guesses. Okay, that's it for me.
Yeah, well, good cheese. And so I'll put another link up, just kind of, or I don't know, it's there. It's like the Lingit curriculum folder. It sort of gets you to the main folder of the stuff. And if you get into that Google folder, you scroll down to texts, you go to Downhauer, you could find a PDF version of everything that they've done. And so if you don't like writing in your books, you can print one of those stories. Also, we're in talks with Alaska Heritage Institute about sort of doing a reprint of just the stories. Like the beautiful, amazing introductions are fabulous, but we want some stuff where students can really get in and do the work. And then also, yeah, start highlighting things. I like this idea. Like if you're looking for those direction location things, make them green or whatever. Like I did a whole sort of, working on a whole slideshow for talk, and I'm trying to color code the whole language, right? And then it gets even more if you don't want to really color code the verbs. But you could also go in and say, well, let me underline the root and circle the classifier, because I'm getting good at spotting these verbs. So now you can start spotting those two parts of the verb. Then if you start figuring that out, you can start pulling the prefix apart and putting all the things that are in there. And sheesh, okay. And yeah, don't be afraid. Like, we're not here to get it all right. That's just not what we're trying to do. Some people might get mad at that. That doesn't mean we're going to be wrong all the time. But if you're afraid of being wrong, you're probably not going to speak. But if you're not, and it's fine, because also our focus in these kind of earlier phases, and maybe all the time, is just on figuring out what we're saying to each other. That's all. And then responding to that thing. Because if someone says something to me, like I say, ʼadudli.átk. What are you doing? And they say, ʼadudli.átk. I'm not going to break into English like, I asked you what you're doing. That's just foolish. I'll say, ʼadudli.átk. Or something, whatever I'm going to say. Sheesh. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to share one more thing. Speaking of like discouragement and hitting the wall, I think something that I didn't consider and I didn't really understand when I joined the intermediate class, I hadn't taken a class since like 2004, 2005 in Klukwan over here. And then fast forward 16 years later or something like this. And here I am in intermediate class after talking to Lance. And I thought, I couldn't do that. Then we got through intermediate classes just fine. Then advanced class, everything just way over my head on so many, descriptions of where things belong, and it became somewhat intimidating. But there's something that I realized after the first advanced class that we had is that the advanced class kind of reminds me of like intermediates, like, hey, here's what you understand. Here's something that you need to probably work on. Advanced classes, here's all these other things that are out there within our language, and hear how it kind of works. And now I'm at the point where I know those things exist. Now I know where my problems are and what I have to work on. And it doesn't feel as intimidating now that I have the idea of what I need to do to get better at speaking. So I think that if you feel like you hit the wall and you're like, I need to get the hell out of this class for a while, you know, it's getting too difficult, or I need to, I'd say just keep on going. That's what Lance had told me. And he was right. You know, wherever you have a hard time, you're just picking up the idea of what you need to learn. And I just like to share that with some of the beginners that might feel really discouraged at this point. All right, thank you.
Jeez.
Well,
Ah,
I want to tell everybody about getting things wrong. Well, for years we've been working with KSC on these stories, hundreds of sentences, and we try them first, and some are pretty tough. And Chiwu and Yidusitsin, they've managed to get a number of them right, but I'm going to tell you that I don't think I've got one correct yet. 2 years, but Keishi, she is so kind. She just gives this nice smile and says, well, I would kind of put it this way. That's neat.
goodness, cheese.
I have one more tip.
Ah,
I canceled one of my streaming services and paid for YouTube Premium because it's only $5 a month if you're a student or have a student email.
ooh.
And what it does is it eliminates all ads, so I can play that YouTube playlist that I shared with everyone
Wow.
with no English at all. It runs for 15 hours straight now. So I put it on in my house and I can just listen to Lingit all day as I'm doing anything in my life. I live in a studio apartment, so it's really easy to hear it everywhere. So that was one of the tips I've done. Cancel all your streaming services and get YouTube Premium for students.
Okay, goodness, cheese. Fabulous. Okay, let's take a short break. Take 5. Come back. We'll do questions. Oh, autocorrect in the Zoom chat. I think it is in your computer settings. So I found that it wasn't in the Zoom at all. I had to go to System Preferences, and then I had to go to Keyboard, I think. And then under, if you're on a Mac, into Text, and then there's a thing that says Correct Spelling Automatically. Because yeah, I would be typing Lingit and it'd be messing me up. It's like, I look bad enough. Why you gotta make me look worse?
I tried to type yeah away and it just kept changing it to awesome.
That's not a bad interpretation. I mean, okay, I'll pause the recording. Okay, Kashuk, you want to share your pictorial journals?
Ganalchish, Yakayach Satini, Kashukaya, Iwakshiye de Kukwasne.
Sheesh.
Ilatuga Ganalchish for this idea of a visual Lingit journal with Google Slides. That's where I got this idea, and it's been very helpful for me as a visual learner. So this is just Google Slides, and let's see if I can move this out of my screen. It's like a journal. So sik disi tseka kanaskadushu yagi sandi achtu seguchas hinich. And I had a little fun here with Photoshop. I'm not very good, but
Hey,
it's my dream for Lingit place names. Ashinich kuchwatin akach kustasekt at. Love to ride my bike there, especially when it's sunny at Chashinich and it's cold and not sunny in ʼadudli.átk. Of going over there to get some sun. And then this is, I go there a lot, so it's fun to study the place just from season to season and see the micro changes and think about how to say these things in Lingit. Chukanka yana e ʼadudli.átk sechwani yehuti. And look at the seasons. Tak itige. Ich yehuti. Ach shadle yehuti. So maybe tak yehwaji. So this is just one strategy that I like, and I thought I would share with the class. And this is Google Slides, which is free if you have a Gmail account. It's a great tool. So
okay, sheesh. Yeah, and everybody who has a UAS account has Google, all the googly things. So sheesh, okay. And that's good because like it's like you were there and you're making the sentences about things you were doing, which makes a lot of sense, right? Okay, let's oh, go ahead.
Yak echawe yu katangi kashuk kawadai uk echawe gonalchish achtu klege kag.
And yeah, one more thing to add is just like you've taught us, Kune is going to Lingit from an image and not through Enach. So using those images to go straight to Lingit rather than through English is something I like to try and do.
Okay, we'll try something a little bit different now. So I'm going to show you some pictures of a story. This is a little story. And we'll just silently look at 11 little images. Kleka, decha, naska, dakun-a, kijin-a, kedushu-a, dachadushu-a, naskadushu-a, gushuk-a, jinkat-a, jinkat-katlek. So what we would do with these a lot of times is I started using these during language immersions. Oops, I don't know what we're doing there. Hold on. And what they are is they're actually developed by linguists to try and elicit particular things out of Tlingit speakers. So they'll try and think of like, well, I'm trying to figure out how you would sort of say, is it this, is it that, have you seen this, have you seen, or something like that. For example, there was one where they're trying to figure out how doubt works in Lingit. So they wrote up a little story. It said, here's this guy, he has a cat, he's trying to give his cat a bath, but it runs away and hides in the garage, and there's these 3 baskets, a red one, a blue one, and a yellow one. He's like, maybe it's under the basket. So he looks under the blue one. No, it's not under there. Maybe it's under the red one. It's not under there. Well, it's got to be under the blue one, whichever one's left. And then he finds a cat. And the elders had a lot of fun with this, and it also helps us figure out how perhaps and maybe and stuff tends to work. So, but then I'd say, oh, well, we could use these for fun. So I would take them to, we used to have these wonderful immersion gatherings in Carcross and Teslin. One of them in Carcross, we probably had 6 speakers, like with very high fluency. So then we got some advanced learners, some intermediate learners, some beginning learners, and we made sure every group was kind of a good mix. And we would give them this piece of paper that had this little story and say, you can't speak English, now you've got to write the story. And so they'd have to sort of look and figure out what the story was and go through. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to come up with some potential sentences here for each of these little slides. So what do you think is going on in this first one?
Gusu achish.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Gusu ach ish. I think that works really well. I guess I should have done one where I could type out. That's okay. Okay, so gusu ach ish, right? Everybody know what that is, right? Yatacha.
Way achwawus. Gusu ach ish.
Gunchish. Wechich achwawus. Gusu ach ish. If there's any part you don't understand, just go ahead and ask. Everybody know what achwawus is? Everybody not know what achwawus is?
I don't know what that is.
Okay, somebody tell me what it is. I asked them. Okay, so there's a command form of that. Chanawuz, ask them. Chachwawuz, I asked them. Chatchewawuz, they asked me. And then we had the question.
Can I get that in the chat?
Oh, sure.
Sheesh.
Oh, I think it's in there. I might need one more A. Okay. Yatakwa. Oh, and if you've offered up a sentence, give someone else a chance. And if you haven't offered one, go for it. Oh, okay. Weyech anawuz. Ask Raven. Ask that Raven. Weyech. Okay. Where is the raven?
Yeshke?
Yeshke? Okay. But what's another way we could ask a similar question to, if I said, okay, we're going to take gusu ach ish off the table because it's been asked. Is there another way that this little kutzin, maybe it's a kakak, could ask about their ish? Ach ish ge yisatin. Does everybody know what that is? Ach ish ge yisatin. Anybody not know any parts of that? It's okay if you don't. Just say it.
Have you seen my father?
Yes, have you seen my father? Ach ish ge yisatin. And let's say something different than ask the cat. And it's totally up to you though, whatever you want to say. Who hasn't said anything yet?
Gwash douche awasku.
Okay, gwash douche ausiku.
Ausiku.
Gwash douche ausiku. Any parts of that we don't know. Everybody knows gwash? Maybe. Everybody knows douche? Ausiku. Or you could say gwash douche siku. You say it that way. Maybe the cat knows. Knows it, technically. Okay, now we gotta say something different than where's the cat?
I did one, but I want to put Atskani.
That's Skani.
Shakte douche chodji amsiku.
Okay, Shakti douche yechwaji amsiku. Is that what it was? Does everybody know Shakti? Maybe yes, maybe no. So gwash is kind of like maybe, but I kind of doubt it. Shakti is right in the middle. Maybe yes, maybe no. Kshe is maybe, but kind of probably. Although if you go inland, gushe is I don't know. Ha gushe. Sometimes they'll say it that way too. What about yechwaji? We know that one. Someone tell me what that one is. Yechwaji.
I believe.
Yeah, I believe, I suspect, I think. This opens the door to theorizing in Lingit, which is a typically considered kind of a higher function in language, is to be able to come up with a theory. I think they went that way. You know, whatever the thing is, right? Yechwaji, some other verb. So you could say, Yechwaji awasku. I think that they know. Right? So you could do that.
You might also, the mouse might be saying like, Weidush Khande Yin Yan Hakat.
We douche khandi yan khakut. I'm going to see the douche. Okay. Now we gotta come up with something new. We already said gusu achish. Achish ge yisatin. What's another question this little kutin can ask? Eight pages in.
Douche yusitin get achish.
Douche yisatin ge achish. Gute sabu gut achish. Say something like that. Where did my father go? Okay. Yataqa.
There's a special verb for ate it all up.
The cat is kind of smiling, so I don't know if there's something coy. Ah.
Would it be nächte?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it could be nay, but that would be sort of maybe the mouse's perspective. Yeah. Although, huh?
I was gonna say, how about Niku?
Yeah, achjiwu. Anybody? How would we say in my mouth? Anybody know that one? Yep. So you have a ch right here. You could go chede, you go chedach, you go chedach. So chede would be towards the mouth. Chenach would be through the mouth. Chedach would be from the mouth. Chet would be to the mouth. But once you go inside, now you're shaka. So sha is the neck. Ka is on the neck. So like some of these things are pretty fun when you get into body parts, the way that Lingit thinks about them, right? Whether it's foot fingers. My daughter used to say foot fingers when she was little. That was the best because they are called foot fingers, your toes. And so sometimes like it's sometimes like, oh, okay, it's one of those things. And so you will see the word sa and se on a whole bunch of things. And that has to do with this body part right here, the base of your neck. And it's also your voice and your vocal cords, kind of. But kind of depends on how it's being used. And then there's this whole, I was talking about shkuyet, we were texting about it, I think this morning. There's this whole related world of sa verb roots. I think it's actually all one big verb root that's connected to breathing, naming, calling out, resting, losing your breath, being alive, regaining your breath. All of those, I think, are the same verb root, sa, which is related to this base of your neck. You'll see a bunch of things too that have tla in them. Shaituch, shadik. More nouns than built onto verbs. Okay. Oh, yeah. Yisikuush is another good one. Popped up in the chat. Kutesabokut. Ach ish. Yisikuush. If you only knew. I had an uncle when you asked him, what's that yeti? He'd say, Yisikuush. And he'd just start laughing. What do we say here?
Ach ish at ʼadudli.átk.
Yeah, ach ish iachake. Did you eat my father? Okay. I guess he could say,
Ah.
Another potential could be iyiktekakpogut, which is kind of wild. I don't know if I'm going to walk inside of you, as inside your body. And our great conclusion. What's that? Oh yeah. Wasashti Danuk. Achish. How you doing? How you feeling, Dad? Okay, gonna cheese. So they're pretty fun. There's a whole bunch of these. They're just they're interesting, I think, because you have to say things that are really kind of unusual, and maybe that takes the pressure off of trying to get it right, because you're just like saying some kind of silly stuff. So, gonna cheese. There is a base camp app that we've been trying to utilize a little bit. And there's some potentially big news, but it's all just potential at this point. It could be a situation in the fall where the 0 credit option for Lingit, Haide, and Simshan classes are all free for everybody with unlimited enrollment, which would mean much larger groups potentially learning Lingit at all 3 levels, learning Haide at all 3 levels, learning Simshan at all 3 levels. I do think there's a reality a year from now where even the credit courses are relatively free, like just a pretty moderate cost, but there are going to be scholarships available and everything. We're trying to really figure out some stuff because I think we are down to 9 master level speakers, and all of them are elders. And so these are things, it's like, it is crisis time, but we're also doing pretty good with numbers and getting folks up to these kind of higher levels of being able to speak and do some things. Like if that little mouse wanted to say, I can't get out of here. Like, that's kind of a tough thing to say, right? Anybody know how to say that? I can't get out of here.
Is it Kish Audit?
Kesh ade. I see a hand up. You want to try?
Oh, no, that's not what I had my hand up for. I was wanting to ask if the potential news about the classes being available, if that's knowledge that we can share with people to have them keep their eye out for it if they would be interested.
I wouldn't share it widely, but I would say we hope this, because if they don't get the grant, I don't know what happens. So
yeah,
it's Alaska Heritage Institute, and it's their driving ambition. I've been saying it for years now, and I think it's going to happen, but I also don't want the crushing disappointment of some huge announcement followed by, well, so, but I will let folks know. We might not know till, we might know by the end of the semester though. And then there would be a big news story about it, and also some pretty substantial shifts in the way that we typically do things, just because if you have a class of 100 people, that'd be pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
Kesh ade yat kwagudiye. I would expect there to be the na in there somewhere. So I'll just show you folks, like, you can get some of these answers out there. Oops, let me move this. I think I might need to reshare it. Don't pause, go. Okay, hold on. So to do things like this, you can look these up. So you go to Goot, which is for walking. The cheat code is we're looking for na motion. Like, we can use this one to go to the bathroom, but we'll go down to this na motion right here. We're going to open this up because dach is a na motion verb. If you haven't dealt with that before, don't worry, we will get to that kind of stuff. But you can go down here to these potentials, and you have kesh aden kwagudiye. But this, or kesh ade aden kwagudiye. So I would expect kesh ade yatch, and then that should go na kagudiye. If you've been doing this for a while, and like once you see this, you know that you have na, and you have qa, and you have an irialis, and it's a third person. But if I want to change it to first person, there is a document that can help me do that. Let me open it, and I'll put it over here and change this. Okay, so this is the Verbal Structure Handbook by Wooch, James Crippen. It's got a whole bunch of answers in it, but it's all in what I would consider like short form. Like it's tables, just tables and tables and tables. And if you don't know what this stuff is telling you, it can be a little bit, I guess, kind of confusing perhaps. So we're going to scroll down quite a ways, but basically it's got a lot of information about the language. It's got a lot of information about dialects. It's got a lot of information about related languages. It starts getting into how the vowels differ between the dialects. It goes into the sounds of Lingit. It goes into types of nouns. And basically, when we talk about nouns, there are things that can be possessed and things that cannot. Then there's also things that must be possessed or else they change, like a body part. There's a little short thing about the possessive suffix, but there's quite a bit to it, but that's a good short answer. Then we start getting into, these are a bunch of suffixes and things you can attach to nouns. And these are some basic universal directions. And then these are a whole bunch of post positions. So they can say like around something, behind something, above something. And almost all of them are listed right here. And we're going to jump way down. It does start getting into, then on this page, it does start getting close to the verb. So these are, these are adjectives. There are two types of adjectives. So if you see the dash on the bottom here, that means that one goes in front of the noun. So you'd say ak a cake, good dog. And you could say Kate Sean, old dog. So if you see it on the left, that adjective comes after. I do think you can only have one, but there's a list of them. There's ones that go in front, ones that go after. Pronouns, we will deal with those forever. But basically your goal is to, there's some of these you won't use a whole lot, but there are some you're going to use an awful lot. And then we're going to skip down. There's a whole bunch of verb stuff, a whole bunch of directional stuff. But what we are here for is way down here. This gives you prefixes. So as you're starting to learn Tlingit, if you find a verb, you can look at this table to see what, like, for example, if you know that cha is what the root should be for eating it, chwacha, I ate it. Watuacha, we ate it. Yicha, or it should be iyacha, you ate it. Yicha, or yingcha, y'all ate it. Waduacha, it was eaten. And it doesn't really give you the third person with a object on there, but it has to be awacha, they ate it. It is really helpful as you start to sort of put this stuff together yourself to say, well, I can just consult the chart. And that would include things that have a prefix on front of it, a thematic prefix. But we're going down here to the advanced section, and we're going to go look for one that has na and qa. If you haven't done this before, don't worry. But here's na, here's qa. Then there's this little section right here that has the irialis as well. Oops, right here. So then this is what we should be expecting, is naqwa. But what happens with when odd day comes before it is it contracts that to So then when we go back to the thing, we should say kesh ade yat nakwagudiye. I can't get out of here, which is wild because I guess if you can't do a potential verb, you're just stuck forever. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay.
So does that verb
What's
mode have, so does that verb mode have an aerialis in it?
Yes. Always and it's really wild because it has the conjugation prefix, the aerialis, ka mode, plus I. It has to have those four things in the prefix. Which is, I think it's the only verb where you can have an aerialis and a plus I at the same time. Okay.
Okay, those charts just make me dizzy still, you know. I guess if you're like a certain kind of learner, they might be helpful, but on the other hand, I have this thing beside me every day, like that, because there are other parts that I find really helpful. But in terms of naka or naga or whatever, it just makes no, for me anyways.
Right. Well, you're starting to get like 4 or 5 things in the prefix and then they start jumping over each other and stuff. And that's where it gets kind of wild. Sheesh. Oh.
You've also chosen climbing, the verb to climb out of there, like you couldn't climb out of there.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, well, what would change? You would still have nakwa, but then you'd have 8. And you'd say, kesh ade yadach nakwa 8. Okay. So in these last 15 minutes, let's, what kind of questions you got? Ask them, and the advanced learners will tell you all the answers. And I'll just sit here and sip coffee and nod my head in agreement.
Is there a single word for saying that it's the sun is shining and it's raining at the same time? I know in other languages there's a concept that there's a special type of weather you can have. I was wondering if our language had it.
Has to incarnate. I'm clocking out. I'm on overtime already. I'm just kidding.
Are you asking for like a rainbow?
Hey, so today when I was driving to class, it was beautifully sunny, just clear skies, but big fat raindrops to mist back and forth. No rainbows. And I can't think of another language, but I know I've seen it on the underside of a Snapple cap, that there is a word in other languages that describes this weather. And I was just wondering if we have one.
Well, okay. There is a word for the precipitation to stop, but the precipitation is still going and the sun is shining through it. So I've never heard one, but it's a really good question because just yesterday I think we were talking about building the circle of people that we can ask questions to. And then, my running joke was like, I want to do a little short film of like somebody sitting by an old school red telephone as the thing at hotline. Be like, why is this classifier plus I? And they were like, what should I name my kitten? So like, that would be like every 4th call. What should I name my puppy? What should I name my kitten? I got a mouse. People ask me this stuff all the time. That's like, cake. Call it cake. Move on. But I do think what we need to do is do this so that we can keep, like, this is a question we'll probably kick up the chain and have someone ask Kishi, Bessie Cooley, or Anatahash, Sam Johnston. Because now is the time we have to ask every single question we could think of. Because the reality is, like, maybe 10 years from now, it's us, right? We're not going to have these master speakers left. So we do have to figure out. And they're giving us awesome stuff. Every day they're doing work. And they're just amazing, tireless. I've never heard of one, but we'll ask.
I appreciate. I really thought we would have one because we have so many other beautiful words for different types of rain.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that has to be. It has to have something.
Yeah, because I'd probably say siu tunach yeandagan. It's shining through the rain, but we'll see. Okay.
Is there a word for like cousin or kinship term for just cousin?
Go ahead, you. Go ahead. I told you. I gave you guys the instructions. No. So you've got to, generally, I think we go pre-contact. You had to figure out whether they were your same moiety or not. Same moiety, achuni. Opposite, achkani. You had to pick one. There is like achyakawu, which would be like my trading partner. There's another fun one, huahu, which is like your gang. So like when they if you're gonna ku'ik, in a lot of communities there's a really fun time when they bring out these big bowls of fruit. And they'll say your name, right? So they'll say Chone, Chayide de Huachutin. So under the mouth of Chone with his gang. And then they come and we all start pounding on the table and yelling. And then when they put it down, we all grab as fast as we can. And it's fun. It's really fun. But, yeah, I don't think there is. But now Chuni just generally means friend. But usually you would find where they are in the kinship tree. If they're the same clan as you, you would refer to them as a sibling. And then if they're the same moiety, they can also become a sibling as well. So yeah, there's not an actual word for cousin though.
So would you use the word for friend? How do you say that again?
Chuni.
Chuni. Would you use chuni for cousins who are not in the Lingit side of the family?
I would call him Connie.
Connie.
But I mean, but I guess it depends, because if you were Lingit through your father but not through your mother, well, I don't know.
Kunei, your telephone idea to elders? Gwas Lingit you could angi gashuk take.
Yeah, well, because geez.
Hey, I have something to add. As you're at the Baskin Auntie-in-law from advanced class, I also want to add a challenge to questions to the beginners because this is the way I was auntie. So when you ask a question, have something that you like, a word you've been thinking of, and be like, can I apply this? Or if you're asking another question, like, how do you say this random word? And you get told that, I want to challenge you to repeat it, remember it, and use it soon. So I'm going to ask, who remembers how Khune said the word for how he might say it's raining and sunny at the same time? Ooh, yeah.
Ooh. Okay.
Siu tunach ya on the plane.
The hotline is still open. Anyone else? There was siu tunach. The second part was a little different though. It wasn't out of gun.
Ungun.
Yay, undergun. Yay,
Yay,
undergun. Okay. Sheesh. That's a good challenge.
Yeah, one thing I've been wondering about, so like in the sentence in English, like I gave him the tea, the giving has two objects. And I'm wondering how's that handled in Lingit?
Yeah, okay. That's a good question. Okay, so first, let me find, oops. So first off, there are a whole bunch of handling verbs. And what they do with is the type of object. So the one thing is you have, so Lingit likes to go object, subject, verb. And there's a bunch of these things where the object is the thing. And then you end up with an indirect object. Like, so I give this to them. I told this to them. So then you end up with a possessive pronoun outside of it, and then jeet, to their possession. So jeet, to my possession. Jeet, to your possession. Jeet, to their possession. Jeet, 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 jeet. The second part is there's like probably more than this, but these are like at the time that I put this book together, like these are the ones that I could find. I think there's a few others out there. But you have sort of like a compact object, I gotta update this, or an abstract concept. Gunashish, gao achjiti. Thank you for giving me some time, or the time. Then you have a complex object, so something with moving parts. Like this would be a good one for a cell phone. A round or spherical object, like an apple or a ball. A hoop-like object, like a bracelet or a hula hoop. A rope-like object that you grab by the end of it. So maybe an extension cord, where you're going to pick up the end, you're going to plug in to the wall. A coiled rope-like object, like maybe some rope that's already, because it's all, the reason why these things are there is because they tell you how you need to carry it. And I started realizing that when we had, so there's one for a container with objects in it, sa'in. That's like, achjit sa'in hin, give me some water. Or, ach'it sa'in hin, put some water to my mouth. We had these little clear cups of mandarin oranges. And we were saying, achjit sa'in. And the elders said, no, that'd be achjit te. But there's things in it. And they said, but you can't dump it out. So it's all about like, don't spill it. You got to carry it without spilling it. But achjit te means that it doesn't spill. It's just considered an object. So there's a whole logic behind these. And I made a card game for them where you kind of match the colors or the patterns. And so the idea is like you'd probably do, everybody has nouns in their hands, like a basketball, a chair, a belt, a drum, an empty basket. And then someone lays a card that lays the verb card or flips it over. It says, achjit tan. You go, tuk, and it's empty. It's an empty basket. First one to put it down wins, or it gets rid of that noun card. But if it says achjit tan, and you put the apple down, then you got to take it back and take another noun. So we were just having fun with that because I was like, I made the cards and then I showed it to some students. Someone said, how do I win? So we had to make up some rules for it. That's a good question. So the way you'll see these, though, is, let's see. We'll go look up T here. Scrolling down. So here we've got to give, and then we see N, jeet, object, ka, subject, T. So N is the one you're giving it to, and that means noun. Ah,
So linguistically, you haven't used the concept of indirect objects in both English and English?
I probably haven't said that to you guys.
Okay, because sometimes it is helpful.
Okay. Okay. Sheesh. Yeah, so you can have indirect objects in Lingit. Because you can also, another way would be like ʼadudli.átk, sagu, right? So that the object jumps outside of the whole verb. Okay. What else you been thinking about?
I always have so many questions, but then once you ask it, just.
I was wondering, what's the protocol for if someone asks what your name means and it's in reference to a story? Are you able to freely share that with them? And like, especially because I don't know all of the details of the story, would it be inappropriate for me to give bullet point explanations? How to approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I get like names are atu, stories are atu, but then if that's your name, that's also your atu, right? And so it kind of comes down for me to this. What's the audience? Like, is this a friend of yours? Like, go for it. Go ahead. Are you on a microphone in front of people? That might be a little different. Are you being recorded and it's being broadcast to the universe? That's probably a little different. And that just means like you might want to make sure you got some details correct and then other things. Generally, if it's tied to a Raven story, those can be told by anybody. Some of them do have more direct connections to others. So like my name comes from this story where Raven goes into a whale and sends this thing up so people look at it so he can get away. And when the thing goes up, it goes, then he takes off. I think it's okay to do in a small environment where you're just sort of, it's not being recorded and you're sharing it. There are some names that are tied to, and if the name is tied to some traumatic event, this glacier came and it wiped out this village and somebody died. That one might be a little bit more sensitive. But again, if the audience is small, just between friends or family, I do think it's fine. But if you're telling it to a group of people, now you're getting into this area where you're starting to represent the clan, then you just got to be a little bit more careful.
Awesome. Sheesh.
Okay.
Is there a way to talk about like the act of putting up food or money for a passing or ku'i? Because I know we talked about how to provide emotional support for a clan. But I was curious, like, is there a word or verb we can use to describe that?
Yeah, so there's like kawaqih is to donate money. You would say dana wutuwajak, like we killed the money. And when you say kill the money, you're specifically saying we all came and we put money into the bowl. And there's another phrase called jinda'at, which is a Kagwantan name as well. But like, let's say this was a Shangukedi Ku'ik. That's an Eagle Side clan. So it's a little bit different in every community. But like if I was invited to that Ku'ik, I would go as a Raven. I know I'm a guest. I might bring $100 in kind of small bills. And as I saw Eagle people who are the hosts that I'm connected to, I give them some money, just a little bit. But if it's like my father's people or something, I give them a little more. If it's my kids, I'll give them a little more. And then then they're collecting money from all these ravens, and then they have their own significant amount of money. Jinda'at would mean Okay, we're the Shangukiri. We're going to call all the other eagle clans to come up first and put your money in the bowl. That's Jinda'at, the helping hand. That's the way they translate it. They would all put the money into the bowl, usually reading names like, oh, my auntie couldn't come, but she sent $100, and so-and-so gave me this, and so-and-so gave me that, and I'm putting in $500. And then it's a total of blank, right? And they're usually reading this into a microphone. Then the Shangukiri would go last, usually with the sort of most high-ranking people going last within the clan, like who are maybe the ones who are hosting the whole thing or helping to put it together. And they would be usually putting in the biggest amounts of money, and then everyone would start doing fun stuff while some of their in-laws, Hastikaniyan, are counting up all the money. Once they've counted everything, they would make an announcement of how much money there was, hold it up, and while they're holding it up, they would name a bunch of people from their own clan, the last one being the ones that they're kind of hosting the ku'ik for, followed by Kade. So Kade means going over them. When you're doing the same thing with a fire dish, you'd say Chede, to their mouth. But once you called out all those names and you have your opposites, Ikaniyan, holding that bowl up, and you've called those last names, a lot of times you do the last one 4 times. Now that money has been killed. And that's the term they use. This would do a jak. Dana would do a jak. It literally means it's been killed, but it means separated. There's no way anybody can go and take that money back. It must be given away to all your opposites. Okay, good to see you, Han. Have a great spring break. Get some rest. Listen to a bunch of Lingit. See you folks in however long, 10 days, whatever it is. Good to see you. Hucha.
Hey,
Cheese.
Cheese. Siap sa sitin.
Ikecha.
Cheese.
Yadichat.
That's cheese.
Okay.
She's already off of there. Nope. Yep, she is.
Cheese.
Okay.
I've been kind of looking at this for the last 10 minutes or so, the classifier shape thing that we went to find Nakwa.
Uh-huh.
And is there somewhere where I can find out what all these letters mean? Because it just, I have been scrolling through here to try and find what classifier shape means and these new letters that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, so this is ya, so that is the plus I version of the 0 classifier. The 0 is another one. The one that might not be familiar is when you have this capital C, that means this could be, so the capital C just means consonant.
Okay.
Di, or like, yeah, di, sh, j, gl. So that means you can change that consonant, and so you'd have nachtuse, nachtule, and so that's what that means. So then that, if you had sa as the classifier, nakasa, nachtusa.
Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. That's all I needed.
Okay, thanks for asking. Yeah, we'll go over that too next time we look at it.
All right.
And the C is a vowel, so yeah.
Okay. Go cheese.
Okay.